And I think you said, ma'am, oh, let me ask you this. Were you also taught that when taking pictures of blood stains, it may be important to know whether or not the blood stain has some direction, correct?
Yes.
And to know whether it has some direction, one would want to know whether the direction is north, south, east, or west, correct?
Correct.
And for that purpose, ma'am, weren't you trained at the SID that when taking photographs of blood stains, that somebody should at least put into the photograph an arrow pointing north? Weren't you taught that?
Excuse me, counsel. She's the probationary trainee. Mr. Fung was in charge, and there was a photographer taking these pictures. So this is interesting, but not tremendously relevant to this witness.
Well, there's only one photograph here that has an arrow and a northerly direction on it. Isn't that right?
It appears to be yes.
And that's for item 7, correct?
Correct.
And item 7, Dennis Fung wasn't with you when you collected it, correct?
Correct.
In fact, the person who was with you when you collected item 7 was one of the more senior supervisors in the whole SID, correct?
Correct.
What's his name?
Mr. Steve Johnson.
And did Mr. Johnson direct that the N and the arrow be placed in the photograph?
I do not remember.
Well, did you direct that it be placed in the photograph? You may sit down again. Would you agree, ma'am, that in terms of the drops that were collected, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, that for those drops that do not have a ruler in the picture, there is no record of the size of those drops?
That is correct.
And would you agree, ma'am, that for the drops at Bundy, there is no ruler in any of those photographs?
I believe that is so.
You believe it's so that there is no ruler in any of those photographs?
That is correct.
And so would you also agree that there is no record for the size of any of the blood stains at Bundy, of the drops on the walkway?
That is correct.
And would you also agree that all blood drops are not the same size?
That is definitely correct.
And as you sit here today, 10 months later, do you have an independent recollection of the size of each blood stain at Rockingham and Bundy?
No.
And at any time while you were at Rockingham and Bundy, did Dennis Fung instruct you to note the size of each of the blood stains in writing on the field notes?
Overruled.
No, he did not.
Well, would you agree, ma'am, that the size of the blood stain is an indication of how much blood is present?
That is not necessarily so.
I said is one indication of how much blood is present.
It could be one indication, yes.
And would you agree, ma'am, that how much blood is present would indicate how much DNA one would expect to isolate from a blood stain?
I am not a serologist. I do not know.
Have you at any point in your instruction been told that the larger the blood stain, the more DNA one would expect to get from the blood stain? Has that been taught to you?
Sustained. She's already testified to that issue, counsel.
Ms. Mazzola, did you personally do the phenolphthalein test on the spec next to the driver's handle?
Yes.
And did you do that at the direction of Dennis Fung?
Yes.
And after you did the phenolphthalein test, and it came up magenta, pink, you collected that swatch, correct?
Correct.
And to your knowledge, to this day, Ms. Mazzola, has any confirmatory test ever been done to make sure that that speck was human blood? No.
Overruled. Overruled. Do you know if any confirmatory test was done on that?
I do not know.
Proceed.
Now, back at Rockingham in the morning of June 13th, isn't it a fact that you personally and exclusively collected every drop of blood that was seen at Rockingham?
Mr. Fung assisted on a few of the drops.
When you say that Dennis Fung assisted on a few of the drops, what do you mean by that?
That he also took some swatches.
And on which items do you now say he also took some swatches?
Just rephrase the question.
You say this morning that Dennis Fung assisted you on some of the stains.
Correct.
And you say that you mean by assisting you that he took some of the swatches.
Correct.
Do you mean that for some items you took some swatches and he took some swatches?
Correct.
So on each of the items, you personally took swatches,
Correct.
but at least as to some, he also took some swatches. Is that correct?
Correct.
Ma'am, when you testified on direct examination and cross-examination last Thursday, didn't you say that with respect to items 4, 5, and 6, that Dennis Fung alone was the collector of those items and not you? Wasn't that your testimony just this last Thursday?
I don't remember if it was or not.
You said one more, Your Honor. You testified on August 23rd, 1994. Didn't you testify that you alone collected all the drops of blood at the Rockingham location?
Counsel.
Okay. Page 698.
I'll check, because this has been asked and answered.
It's in a different context, Your Honor.
Same exact word.
I'm sorry, 698? What line, counsel?
Line 21.
Objection sustained.
Oh, Ms. Mazzola, when you testified on August 23rd, 1994, do you recall me asking you which items you collected at Rockingham? Do you recall me asking that question?
The objection was sustained, counsel.
This is a different quote I'm getting at, Your Honor. It's a
All
different portion of the transcript.
Proceed.
It's page 700, line 6 to line 18.
Line which?
Line 6 to line 18.
Proceed.
Would you please restate the question?
Ms. Mazzola, when you testified on August 23rd, 1995, were you asked by me which items you personally collected at the Rockingham scene that morning?
Excuse me, I don't remember the exact question. It might have been something like that.
Well, were you asked to distinguish those items that you collected personally as opposed to those items that you collectively collected with Dennis Fung?
Well, I'd ask for a page and line site.
700, starting at 6.
Were you asked that?
I believe so. I'm not 100% sure.
And isn't it a fact, ma'am, that when you were asked which items you collected at Rockingham, that you understood that question to mean those items that you personally collected as opposed to those items which you collected with Dennis Fung? Isn't that correct?
I'm going to sustain the objection. That's not the way this question is phrased, counsel.
All right. Well, let me ask you this. Were you asked these questions and did you give these answers in sworn testimony on August 23rd, 1995? Referring to page 700, line 6 to line 18. You have it?
Yes. I'd object to the record that this is not inconsistent.
Overruled.
Can you please put it up? Oh, that's what you want. What's next in order, Your Honor?
No, it's in the record already, counsel.
Your Honor, I would object to this procedure here.
Overruled. You can read it.
What?
Read it, counsel. Proceed.
Thank you. Were you asked these questions by me on August 23rd, and did you give these answers? Question. And after you removed that stain on the Bronco, you then began to collect the stains leading up the driveway toward the front door of Mr. Simpson's house?
Wait, take it down. It's not inconsistent. Doesn't say all the stains, it says stains. Take it down. Proceed.
Ms. Mazzola, when you were asked about the stains that were collected on Rockingham on August 23rd, did you ever testify that Dennis Fung collected even a single stain?
I don't remember if I did.
Did you testify that Dennis Fung even assisted in collecting a single stain?
Wait a minute. It's irrelevant unless she was asked.
Sustain.
Was it your understanding when you were asked questions about the collecting of stains at Rockingham, Ms. Mazzola, that the questions were being asked of what you personally collected as opposed to what you collectively collected with criminalist Fung?
Overbroad and relevant.
Sustain. I'm going to sustain the court's own objection under 352 now. This is too confusing given the state of this particular transcript. It's not clear. The question was not clearly asked. Proceed.
Did you find the first one? One moment, John. Ms. Mazzola, a few moments ago you testified that you and Dennis Fung together each swatched portions of stains 4, 5, and 6. Is that correct?
This has been asked and answered under 352.
Overruled.
He assisted on some of them. I'm not exactly sure which exact stain.
Ms. Mazzola, 5 minutes ago, didn't you say with some degree of certainty that it was items 4, 5, and 6 that Dennis Fung and you did together?
Compound restates the evidence.
Overruled.
We were both there working. I am not sure exactly if he took swatches from every stain that I did or if he took swatches from one.
I'm not asking you about every stain, Ms. Mazzola. I'm simply asking you whether or not you testified before these ladies and gentlemen of the jury just 5 minutes ago that Dennis Fung and you together each did swatches for stains 4, 5, and 6. Was that your testimony, ma'am?
I'm not sure if I said 4, 5, and 6 or portions of
Portions of 4, 5, and 6.
1 or 2.
Ms. So you're now saying, Ms. Mazzola, that you're not sure which of items 4, 5, and 6 that you both together swatched some of the blood from? Is that your current testimony?
That's vague.
Well, did you not say just a few minutes ago to this jury, Ms. Mazzola, that both you and Dennis Fung together each swatched portions of the stain for items 4, 5, and 6?
I'm not sure if I said that both of us took swatches from 4, 5, and 6, or it could have been 1 or 2. I don't remember.
But at least it's your recollection that both you and Dennis Fung took swatches from at least one of those 3 items. Is that correct?
That is correct.
When you testified just this last Thursday for the same jury at this trial, Ms. Mazzola, were you asked these questions and did you give these answers, referring to page 23851, beginning at line 4?
3. Proceed.
Add one more.
Certainly.
Okay. Were you asked these questions and did you give these answers? Question. Ms. Mazzola, you said a moment ago that you testified this morning on direct examination that it is now your recollection that Mr. Fung, and not you, collected the drops, item numbers 4, 5, and 6. Is that correct? Answer, That's correct. Did you give that answer to that question last Thursday?
If you have it, I guess I did.
You don't recall? You don't?
Let's start with this answer.
Overruled.
Would you prefer to actually read it yourself, ma'am?
No, that's fine. I'll take your word for it.
Well, I
Ms. Mazzola,
Overruled. Excuse me, counsel, when other counsel's making an objection, would you at least allow them to finish? Thank you.
Certainly.
Proceed.
so Ms. Mazzola, on Thursday you testified that you were not involved in the collection of 4, 5, and 6, and that Dennis Fung collected that. Is that correct?
Overruled.
Is that correct?
At the time, I thought that Mr. Fung alone had, yes.
That was as recently as last Thursday.
Yes?
And now today, you have a different recollection of what transpired back on June 13th, 1994. Is that your testimony, ma'am?
Yes?
And when you testified on August 23rd, 1994, at that point it was your recollection, was it not, that you had personally collected all the blood drops at Rockingham. Is that correct?
Sustained.
Have you looked at any notes to refresh your recollection between Thursday and today that led you to change your mind from Thursday to today's testimony with respect to who collected what on items 4, 5, and 6?
Notes, no.
Have you looked at any videotapes to refresh your recollection so that you would change your memory as to who collected what portions of 4, 5, and 6?
Videos, no.
Have you looked at any documents to refresh your recollection that you didn't have available to you last Thursday so you could have a different memory as to who collected what with respect to items 4, 5, and 6?
Documents, no.
Did you have a conversation with any members of the prosecution staff between last Thursday and today with regard to who collected items 4, 5, and 6?
No.
Did you have a conversation with Dennis Fung between Thursday and today as to who collected items 4, 5, and 6?
No.
But you now say that it's your recollection has changed your memory of what your involvement was with regard to items 4, 5, and 6 from just this last Thursday to today. Is that correct?
Yes.
And ma'am, it would be fair to say, I think you said it earlier, that you never wrote down in your notes which of you collected which items. Is that right?
That is correct.
And so the only way you can recall or testify as to who collected which items is strictly from your independent recollection. Isn't that correct?
That is correct.
Has your memory of who collected which items been aided by the prep sessions that you had with the prosecutors in this case?
No.
Did the prosecutors ever tell you that it was important that you give some credit to Dennis Fung for his involvement in this case?
No.
Did they ever tell you that it was important for you to enhance Dennis Fung's involvement in the collection of bloodstain evidence?
No.
In fact, your supervisor, Dennis Fung, didn't even supervise you with respect to the collection of every stain, did he?
Of every stain, no.
He was off collecting other evidence when you collected some of the stains in this case, didn't he?
Yes.
When you collected a stain on a wire the afternoon of June 13th, excuse me, your supervisor was not there to observe you, was he?
That's correct.
And when you collected items 7 and 8, Dennis Fung was not there to observe you, was he?
That is correct.
Now, I want to show you an evidence board prepared by the prosecution.
Proceed.
Well, I was-
Proceed. We'll take it up at noon.
Now, at Bundy, ma'am, as opposed to Rockingham, isn't it true that you collected every single drop of blood at Bundy, with the sole exception being the stains from the 2 bloody shoe prints?
Exclusively, no.
Well, ma'am, were you aware of the fact that when you were, on August 23rd, when you were asked about which drops you collected, did you understand the question to be directed at what you personally collected as opposed to what you collected in conjunction with Dennis Fung?
I do not recall if I knew that was me personally versus us as a team.
Your Honor, I ask the Court's permission to now read the page 700 to the witness for that limited purpose.
I'm going to sustain the same objection because of the manner in which this transcript reads, counsel. It's not a clear question that was put to the witness. Proceed.
You testified on August 23rd, referring to page 735.
I checked this was asking answer
I haven't even asked this question, and I haven't read this portion of the transcript on cross-examination.
to. I'm sorry, I'm sorry.
Which line, counsel? 735 of what line?
One second, Your Honor. Beginning at 734, line 27. And ending on page 736, line 1.
Starting with
734, line 27.
Proceed.
You testified on August 23rd, 1994, where you asked these questions and you give these answers. Question, in which, I'm sorry, at Bundy again, were there certain bloodstains that you collected and other bloodstains that were collected by Mr. Fung? Answer, yes. Question, in which bloodstains were collected by Mr. Fung? Answer, I believe he collected the red stains that were near the shoe prints that were made on the walkway. Question, would you please look at your notes and tell me which numbers those are? Question, and when you say that, you say he collected the actual foot shoe prints, or he collected alleged drops that were near the shoe prints? Answer, he, if I remember correctly, took swatches of the red stains that were constituting the footprint itself. Question, can you tell us which ones those were, please? Answer, property items 55 and 56. Question. And that is it? Answer, yes. Question. All other bloodstains at the Bundy crime scene were collected by you, ma'am? Answer, yes. And while he collected 55 and 56, were you collecting some of your bloodstains? Answer, yes. Were you asked those questions and did you give those answers under oath on August 23rd, 1994?
Yes.
And on August 23rd, 1994, ma'am, would you agree that the events of June 13th were fresher in your mind than they are now 10 months later?
Not necessarily fresher.
Well, would you agree, ma'am, that your memory of an event that happened 2 months previously is stronger than your memory of an event that happened 10 months previously?
That question's irrelevant.
Overruled.
I had not thought of the events of June 13th since we had gotten done with the property reports up until the time I walked into this courtroom for the Griffin hearing.
Ms. Mazzola, would you agree that your memory of an event that happened 2 months prior to your testifying is fresher than it is when you've had 10 months gone by?
Not necessarily.
Okay. Well, Ms. Mazzola, June 13th you collected these items, is that right?
Yes.
You didn't do a single other crime scene between June 13th and the date you testified on August 23rd, did you?
I don't remember if I did or not.
Well, Ms. Mazzola, are there any other notes that would refresh your recollection as to whether you did?
I don't know.
Well, as you sit here today, ma'am, do you have an independent recollection of doing a single other crime scene between June 13th and August 23rd?
Independent recollection, no.
And Ms. Mazzola, when you did this crime scene with Dennis Fung on June 13th, it was an important crime scene to you, was it not?
Every crime scene is important.
Well, Ms. Mazzola, you said when you were told to come to court in this case, rather than being told it was the Simpson case, you were simply told by someone it was the case, correct?
Those were her words, not mine.
I understand that, Ms. Mazzola, but is that what you were told?
That's what I was told,
And when
yes.
this person said to you, it is the case, didn't you know that what she meant was the case of Mr. Simpson here? Didn't you know that?
I had an idea.
Ms. Mazzola, were you aware that just the previous day, August 22nd, your partner in this crime scene collection, Dennis Fung, was testifying in this courtroom before a national television audience? Were you aware of that?
That's been asked and answered. And I also object to counsel's tone.
Sustain. We've gone through this once before.
I thought it was in a different context, Charlie.
Same testimony. We've heard it.
And Ms. Mazzola, you're relying exclusively on your memory, on your independent recollection when you testified on August 23rd, correct?
That and Mr. Matheson's notes.
Well, Mr. Matheson's notes were the original notes that you and Dennis Fung took on June 13th, isn't that correct?
I don't know if they were the originals or not.
Well, the notes were they copies of the notes that you and Dennis Fung took then, on June 13th?
They could have been copies, yes.
Or originals?
That's true.
And what those notes were was the sum total of all the notes that you and Dennis Fung took on June 13th at Bundy and Rockingham, isn't that correct?
That's correct.
And that would constitute the field notes and the crime scene inspection list that this jury has already seen, isn't that correct?
That's correct.
And there are no other notes, are there, that were prepared by you that you've used to refresh your recollection today?
No.
And there were no other notes other than those notes that you relied upon to refresh your recollection when you testified on August 23rd, isn't that correct?
That's correct.
And when you testified on August 23rd, ma'am, isn't it a fact that there is no note saying which items you personally collected and which items Dennis Fung personally collected?
That's correct.
And so between August 23rd and today, ma'am, it's not as if you've had additional notes to look at which will help you remember which items Dennis Fung collected as opposed to which items you collected. Isn't that right?
Sustain as phrased.
Well, Ms. Mazzola, are there any other notes, other than your field notes, that you got from Mr. Matheson that day that indicate which items you collected and which items Dennis Fung collected?
Notes, no.
And there are no notes, ma'am, or reports that were prepared by you that you looked at on August 23rd, which indicated which items you collected and which items Dennis Fung collected, correct?
It's bad in terms of tone.
We're there. All right,
Can I just ask 2 more questions and I'll finish this area?
2 more. slower, though. However, the court reporter is about to go on us.
So both today and on August 23rd, you're relying exclusively on your independent recollection as opposed to any documentary evidence to recall which items you collected and which items Dennis Fung collected, correct?
Memory and photographs.
Have you seen a single photograph showing Dennis Fung collecting items 4, 5, or 6?
At the Griffin hearing, I did not have a chance to look at the photographs before.
Ma'am, I'm simply asking you this. Please, have you seen a single photograph between June 13th and this morning or this afternoon that shows Dennis Fung collecting items 4, 5, or 6?
No.
All right. Thank you, counsel. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take our recess for the morning session. Please remember all of my admonitions to you. Do not discuss the case amongst yourselves, form any opinions about the case, allow anybody to communicate with you, or conduct any deliberations till the matter has been submitted to you. Counsel, I'm going to direct you to confer about that one exhibit that Mr. Neufeld was interested in. All right. If there's any problem, let me know at 1:30. All right, we'll stand in recess. All right, back on the record in the Simpson matter, all parties are again present. The two items that Mr. Neufeld you requested, or the three items, they're back. Do you need any other time to set that up? Mr. Scheck, why don't you give your partner a hand here?
Your Honor, also there were some legal issues as to matters that they'd like to use during cross-examination that we could perhaps bring up before the jury comes back.
Such as? Why don't you move that easel back, just so the jurors can... No, just move it back so when the jury comes in, they don't step over it. Thank you. All right. Let's proceed. Let's have the jurors, please.
Can we bring up those issues, Your Honor?
I haven't seen anything yet.
I don't understand. Well, one of the issues is the defense would like to use a demonstration video that the prosecution created, which is a video that was done simultaneously to the demonstration boards of the blood collection. And I don't object to the use of the video portion of the tape per se, although it's probably not relevant. But there's an audio portion of the tape that basically doesn't contain anything other than my own conversations with the cameramen and with one of the criminalists as to how best to create that evidence, how best to edit it, how best to present it to the jury, and we ended up never using it. Probably I should not have released those comments to the defense on the grounds that they are a privileged work product, but I was confident that there was so little to them that I just gave them the entire tape and didn't realize until later that I shouldn't have done so.
Mr. Neufeld?
But at any rate, I don't see any relevancy to them, and I don't know why counsel would want to play those.
Mr. Neufeld?
Could I ask Mr. Mazzola to please step out during this discussion?
Sure. How long is this videotape?
7, 8 minutes, maybe?
Do you intend on having the audio portion with counsel's comments?
Absolutely, Your Honor, because they're not just counsel's comments, Your Honor. They're counsel's instructions to the witness on what to do at certain points. And not only is counsel giving instructions on what to do, but counsel is actually conveying certain important messages of bias to the witness during the course of that videotape.
When
And
do you
there's
plan on using the videotape?
maybe in about 45 minutes.
Let's see the tape.
Okay.
Okay, anytime you're ready.
Is that as close as you get when you take
We'll charge you for the extra clips later.
Is the video part done now? You're gonna do flash photos now?
When you're done, yes.
So tell me when you're done. So now we're done with the video part?
No, she's gonna be ready.
Okay, then I'll just give you start your flash and then it's okay. I'll just use number 5 as my
Is
example.
there a way that we can get out that little part where she draws some of the swatches?
I didn't think I got it.
Oh, you didn't?
But if it's on there, it's on.
No, I mean, is there any edit it out? Of course. Edit it out.
If it's on there, I'll edit it out.
But then we have a gap, or do we?
Oh, it'll be like 2 pieces of video cut together. This flashes up now? Yeah, it's up now. Why don't you just turn your...
Yeah, just like that, that'll be fine.
Mr. Neufeld.
Thank you. I take it from what Mr. Goldberg said that he's not objecting to the playing of the tape. His objection is to the sound portion, so I will restrict my comment to the sound portion. Your Honor, the portion I believe that Mr. Goldberg is concerned with and doesn't want to be played in front of the jury goes as follows. We made actually a transcript of the one small segment which we believe is certainly relevant and should be played to the jury, although we're not opposed to playing the rest of the soundtrack. And it goes like this. By Mr. Goldberg, is there any way we can get out that little part where she dropped some of the swatches? Answer, I don't think I got it. Mr. Goldberg, oh, you didn't? Then by the camera operator, but if it's on there, it's on there. Mr. Goldberg, no, I mean, is there any way you can edit it out? Camera, of course. If it's on there, I'll edit it out. By Mr. Goldberg, but then, will you have a gap? Camera, no, it will be like two pieces of video cut together. Now, clearly, this is all going on. This discussion about what to do with Ms. Mazzola dropping the swatches on camera is going on in her presence. There's no question that it's on in her presence and she hears it, although I'll certainly ask the proper foundation questions when she testifies. It is our position, Your Honor, that the prosecution is sending a message to Ms. Mazzola that they want to, in this entire evidence collection process, make it seem as simple as possible, that no accidents can possibly occur, that as Ms. Clark said in her opening statement, it's no different than wiping up a spill in the kitchen. That's exactly what they tried to do on direct examination as well of this witness. And clearly the tape shows that it is more difficult, that things can go wrong. In fact, Your Honor, we would ask this witness whether the reason that she said on the witness stand on direct examination that, yes, I've dropped some swatches, but that doesn't matter, you just get rid of them, but denies having ever dropped a swatch with blood on it, is she was prepped in anticipation of the fact that this videotape would be played to the jury to admit that, yes, I do drop swatches sometime because the jury was going to see that. But she didn't have to admit any of the other kinds of mistakes that can occur because at least as to those mistakes, we don't have a videotape record of it. So I would be permitted to ask her these questions to show her bias and to show her state of mind. And the fact of the matter is that she was sitting there, she heard all this said by Mr. Goldberg, he is the prosecutor, and it is to influence her, the way she deals with the whole issue of making mistakes at an actual crime scene. And that's why it's admissible. 1 second.
Mr. Goldberg.
Well, I guess I'm not going to be winning an award at the Cannes Film Festival this year.
I'd say Morris Dees is not shaking in his boots, no.
What? Yeah. I guess it's kind of like watching ice cream melt, and I don't mean Haagen-Dazs. But, Your Honor, what I've heard from the defense here is really absurd. And I think it's very clear what they're trying to do, and it should not be allowed. What we have is a situation where the people are creating a piece of demonstrative evidence. That's all this is. And it is clear from all of my comments that that is what is going on, including comments like, you don't need to collect more than one swatch because one is enough for them to get the general idea. Or can you please turn this way so we can get a better shot of you filling out the card? We are entitled to create this piece of evidence and make it as perfect as we like. We are entitled, as I at one point thought of doing, adding graphics, adding sound, subtracting from the tape, adding to the tape. I could have scored it to the theme music of Mission Impossible if I'd wanted to, which I actually thought of doing. We are entitled to create this any way we want to. And what counsel is really trying to do is he's trying to suggest that there's something wrong or untoward that has gone on here in terms of the creation of this documentary piece of evidence. The distinction is that we are not documenting an event. We are not trying to record a historical event, but we're trying to illustrate something.
Isn't the issue, though, work product and the preparation of demonstrative evidence?
I realize that, Your Honor, and it is work product. And I believed that this was the kind of thing that the defense would not try to use, that there was no reason to redact it out, and then subsequently changed my mind after the tape had already been released to them in a convoluted series of facts that we need not to get into. I don't think that they're relevant. I'm sure Mr. Neufeld would agree. But no, I probably should have. And it is work product. It is my discussing the creation of exhibit. And more importantly, it's not relevant. And I point out that that what we have in a chronology is we have a situation where I talked about doing something that I'm entirely within my rights to do, but did not do, and maintained the evidence unedited, and then turned it over unedited to the defense. So the idea that they would now come forward and try to argue that there's some impropriety, where we have a situation where I'm discussing doing something that I'm entitled to do that I didn't do, and that the only reason why they know I even discussed it is because I turned it over to them and maintained it. And for them now to try to introduce that into this case as an issue is grossly improper, and it should not be allowed. It doesn't have any relevance whatsoever.
Briefly.
Fine. Two things, Your Honor. Just so the record, at least on how this tape was received, is clear. In fact, Mr.
Counsel,
Goldberg...
I don't care how you got it. You
Well, he
got it.
didn't- Okay.
The issue is, how do you get over the work product problem, and how do you get over a 352 objection?
Well, it's not work product, Your Honor, because what we're introducing it for is simply his statements in the presence of this witness to influence her testimony on the witness stand. And any statements that a lawyer makes in the presence of a witness which has the effect of influencing her testimony is admissible because it goes to her bias. That's how it comes in. And even if it wasn't his intent, even if it wasn't his deliberate intent to influence her testimony, it has that effect. And we're allowed to argue that it has that effect to this jury. That's an inference that they're permitted to draw. Clearly, the statements were made in her presence. That's the point. That's not work product. In terms of 352, I don't see that as a big problem here, Your Honor, because certainly it has probative value as to whether or not he said in her presence, you know, let's try and get rid of the portion where you're making this mistake, where you're dropping these swatches. That is a very important message being conveyed to her, that the prosecution in this case wants to make this whole procedure look as simple as possible and wants to cover up any kinds of mistakes that can and do happen.
Which is why they gave you the tape with her dropping the swatches.
No, well, they gave me the tape and they didn't even know it had the soundtrack on it. In fact, initially I thought it was silent as well, and he was going to edit out his comments, Your Honor, and then we played it up and we found out that the volume was there. That's why. The reason he turned over the tape, Your Honor, is because you ordered him to. You may recall we went into chambers and he said he had this tape, and I laid a foundation in the roping room with you, and you said, Mr. Goldberg, turn over the tape now. That was your ruling. It wasn't turned over
Counsel,
voluntarily.
as I indicated to you, I'm not interested in how you got it. You got it.
Well, I understand
The issue
that.
is, does the jury get to see it with the soundtrack, yes or no? That's the only issue.
I understand that too, Your Honor. I'm simply saying that if he wants to, I can agree to eliminate the other comments on the tape, but I believe that comment, which is all of, that whole discussion lasted about 1 minute, and I think I read to you the text of it into the record, is certainly probative, relevant evidence for this witness to show that her testimony here has been influenced by bias, and the bias was generated in part by the statements made by Mr. Goldberg in her presence that we don't want to show this jury instances where swatches get dropped. That's what it goes to. It goes to her state of mind. And that's not work product privilege at all.
Thank you, counsel. All right, the objection will be sustained as work product, also under 352, since the probative value of the evidence is tangential at best, and it's confusing, it's hard to hear as well. All right, let's have the jury. Let's have Ms. Mazzola.
Your Honor, I'm sorry. I know I shouldn't tempt fate here, but I just...
Then why bother?
Because there were certain misstatements that were made as to how the tape were released.
No, sit down, Mr. Goldberg.
Your Honor,
Let's have Ms. Mazzola.
you
Let's have the jurors, please.
Can I make one other comment about
No,
that?
thank you. Let the record reflect we've now been rejoined by all the members of our jury panel. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Andra Mazzola is again on the witness stand undergoing cross-examination by Mr. Neufeld. Good afternoon again, Ms. Mazzola.
Good afternoon, Your Honor.
You're reminded you are still under oath. Mr. Neufeld, you may proceed. All right, Mr. Neufeld, which chart do you have up?
Prosecution Exhibit 177A.
177A. Thank you.
All right, Ms. Mazzola, have you seen this exhibit before called LAPD Evidence Disposition Summary?
Yes, I have.
And have you seen the other LAPD Evidence Disposition Summary, which is marked Prosecution Exhibit 177C?
Yes, I have.
And did you play some role in the creation of these exhibits?
No,
Did they ask for your input when they generated these exhibits?
no,
Did they ask you whether or not the information on the exhibits was correct after they were created?
I don't believe so.
Well, Ms. Mazzola, let me ask you a question. You said before that when you collected item 7, the blood drop on the Rockingham driveway,
Yes,
you said Dennis Fung wasn't even there to observe. Is that correct?
that's correct.
And you collected that one yourself, didn't you?
Yes,
Now, this chart here, this LAPD Evidence Disposition Summary, says for item number 7, collected, and it says Fung and Mazzola, 6/13/94. You see that? If you want to step down, please do.
I've seen it when you went to put it up, yes.
Well, that's not correct, is it? You're the person who collected item 7, isn't it you?
Yes,
It's vague as to what means by collect.
Overruled.
Isn't that correct?
I physically swatched it, yes.
Well, in fact, ma'am, on August 23rd, when you asked questions about what you collected, you understood the question, you understood the word collect to mean that you physically swatched and collected those swatches. Isn't that right?
Overruled.
Yes,
Okay. And you understood the meaning, the word, I'm sorry, withdrawing. You understood the word collect to mean that on August 23rd, and that's the normal way that you use the word collect, is it not?
yes,
Okay. So again, Ms. Mazzola, on this prosecution exhibit, where it says number 7, item number 7, Fung and Mazzola, collected by, that's not correct. It was only correct, collected by you, Ms. Mazzola. Isn't that right?
it was collected by me, yes.
Thank you. Now, let me show you the other LAPD evidence summary board, which is 177C. Remember the drops along the bad pathway at Bundy?
Yes,
And that would be items 47, 48, 49, 50, and 52, correct?
let me double check on that. Yes,
And you personally collected item 47, correct?
let's see, 47
One
was,
moment. Isn't that correct, ma'am? You personally collected item 47.
I did, Mr. Fung managed to get a little more blood off of that one spot, but I collected the majority of it.
Ms. Mazzola, can I see what you're
Sure.
looking at now to refresh your recollection?
I'm just looking at this. because this is the one that was at the corner of the house, the first stop on the trail.
All right, Ms. Mazzola, in the note that you are looking at right now, refresh your recollection, did you discuss with Dennis Fung sometime after you testified on August 23rd which items you personally collected? Was there a discussion?
There was a discussion, yes.
And he also told you his recollection as to which items he thought he personally participated in collecting. Isn't that correct?
Yes,
And after that discussion, you made certain entries in your field notes next to each one of the items, correct?
yes,
And the entries you made were to reflect whether it was an item that you personally collected alone, whether it was one that you collected with Mr. Fung, whether it was an item that Mr. Fung collected. Isn't that correct?
those entries at the time were meant to reflect that, yes.
Okay. And is that the only discussion you've had with Dennis Fung about who collected what in this case?
I don't remember.
Well, and based on your independent recollection, was there another meeting besides this one meeting with him that you've already testified to that occurred after August 23rd?
I had seen Mr. Fung since then. I don't remember exactly what we talked about.
Well, did you talk about who collected what in this case on those other occasions?
I don't remember.
But you do recall one specific meeting where that was the main subject discussed.
Yes,
And that was at a meeting you had with him shortly after you testified or sometime after you testified on August 23rd. Is that right?
yes,
And as a result of that meeting, you made certain entries, you said, on your field notes, correct?
correct.
And for some of the items that were collected, you made entries indicating that an item was collected by both Fung and Mazzola, correct?
Yes,
And when it was an item that you believe was collected by both Fung and Mazzola, would you write in the column that said by F/M for F for Fung and M for Mazzola? Would you do that?
yes,
Isn't it a fact, ma'am, that with respect to item 47, even after the meeting you had with Dennis Fung, you indicated that 47 was collected only by Mazzola?
at the time I thought that was correct, yes.
And you thought that was correct when you testified on August 23rd also, didn't you?
Yes,
And with respect to item 48, ma'am, you were the only person who collected that item too, weren't you?
yes,
And with respect to item 49, ma'am, you were the only person who collected that as well, weren't you?
there was one other drop on the trail that Mr. Fung helped with. I don't remember which one it was.
Ms. Mazzola, when you met with Dennis Fung at this discussion that you had after August 23rd, and you reviewed with him who collected what, didn't you put down that you, only you, Mazzola, collected item 49?
At the time I did, yes.
And Ms. Mazzola, as respect to item number 50, weren't you the only person who collected that?
Let me check my sketch. Let's see. Yes,
And Ms. Mazzola, as to item 52, you were the only person who collected that too, weren't you?
yes.
In fact, Mr. Fung wasn't even observing you collect item 52, was he?
Item 52. No, Mr. Fung was not there.
So the prosecutor's diagram, where it says, for instance, on item 52, collected by Fung and Mazzola, that's incorrect, isn't it?
Well, that calls for speculation
Overruled.
at conclusion.
Overruled.
As it stands there, yes,
That's incorrect.
yes,
And as to item 50, Ms. Mazzola, where the prosecutor's exhibit says item 50 collected by Fung and Mazzola, that too is incorrect, isn't it?
yes,
And with respect to item 48, Ms. Mazzola, where it says collected by Fung and Mazzola, that too is incorrect in the prosecution's exhibit, isn't it?
that one I don't know about. As I said before, there's one stain on the path that Mr. Fung helped with. I don't remember exactly
Well, if
which
there's
one.
one stain that you recall...
Wait.
I'm sorry.
Let her finish the answer.
If there's one stain that you say that you have a recollection that he helped you collect, then as to the other stains on that walkway, where it says Fung and Mazzola collecting it, as to those other stains, that would all be incorrect. Isn't that right?
Number 47 he helped with, and there's one other that he helped with on this path.
So as to the other three, Ms. Mazzola, this board would be incorrect. Isn't that right?
Yes.
And Ms. Mazzola, both on August 23rd and again at your discussion with Dennis Fung, where you reviewed who collected what, at those two times, it was your then recollection that you and you alone collected 47, 48, 49, 50, and 52. Isn't that correct?
At the Griffin hearing, that was my belief.
Been asked and answered.
It has.
It's the last question on this, Your Honor, if I may.
She's answered the question.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you
She's
said.
answered the question.
Well, she started to answer half of it.
She's
She said
answered the
at
question.
Griffin.
She's answered the question,
Okay.
yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Which board is this, Mr. Shea?
It's Prosecution Exhibit 120K. I'm sorry, no, that's individual exhibits, 120.
120, thank you. Proceed.
Now, Ms. Mazzola, the first drop that you collected after you collected the stain on the Bronco door handle was item number 4. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And item number 4 is the one that's actually in the street near the curb
Yes,
behind the Bronco?
yes.
And then item number, I'm sorry, am I blocking? All right. Is that better? Okay. And item number 5 was the second stain you collected, is that right?
Yes, I believe it was.
And item number 5 is a little red stain in the driveway outside the actual gate, though, isn't that right?
Yes.
And, ma'am, the distance from item 4 to item 5 is approximately 12 feet, is it not?
I
As the
wouldn't
crow
know.
flies.
I wouldn't want to hazard a guess.
Well, do you have notes indicating the actual locations of each of these items?
We have the measurements, yes.
Could you look at those measurements and I'm sorry, if you look at those measurements, would you be able to give an approximate estimate as to the distance between stain number 4 and stain number 5?
Let's see. This may be approximately 6 feet or so between them.
Okay. And the next blood drop stain that you collected is item number 7. I'm sorry, item number 6. Is that correct?
6, correct.
Kind of Vegas to you, or even collectively, Senator.
On August 23rd, when you testified that you personally had collected the drops at the beginning of the walk of the driveway leading up to the house, ma'am, was one of the drops collected that day item number 6?
Well, that's unintelligible.
Overruled.
Was item number 6 one of the drops collected that day, ma'am?
Yes, it was one of the drops collected that day.
All right. And what is the approximate distance from item number 5 to item number 6? It's about 8 feet, isn't it, ma'am?
Yeah, it's approximately 8 feet.
Okay. And from blood drop number 6, where is blood drop number 7, ma'am?
Blood drop number 7 is up near the front patio area.
Could you just for one moment please come down and point to it on the diagram? You know what? Get the pointer out, please. Could you move to the side so that it's here? Okay. Could you now point to could you point to the red dot on the diagram? And could you show us what number 8 is?
8 is
All right. And could you please show us where 4, 5, and 6 are?
4.
Could you move out of the way? You're obstructing me here. And where's 5, please? Okay. Let the record indicate that the witness is pointing to what has been previously identified as a red circle indicating item 5. Could you tell us what item 6 is on the diagram? Indicating the higher up of 2 red dots just inside the gate.
Yes.
And could you now also please indicate the location of stains A, B, and C?
Okay. A would be here.
Indicating the lower of the 2 drops that are immediately next to each other just inside the gate.
B is here.
Indicating a red drop just to the left of the D in the word driveway.
And C up here.
Indicating a red circle above the garage, or I'm sorry, midway between the, not quite midway between the garage and the entranceway. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, a little closer to the garage.
Okay. Thank you. You can sit down. Now, Ms. Mazzola, the distance from item number 6 that you collected to item number 7, approximately how far is that?
Let's see. Okay, on that, we changed our point of reference for the measurements. As we got up near the garage, we took our measurements off the garage.
Would it be fair to say, ma'am, that the approximate distance between stain 6 and stain 7 is at least 100 feet or thereabouts?
I wouldn't even know. I'd have no idea.
Now, A, B, and C, you said were never collected, is that right?
That's correct.
Was that Fung's decision not to collect them, ma'am?
Yes.
And did Dennis Fung say to you that the collection of 3 more stains would overtax the laboratory?
No.
Did he say it would interfere with the analysis of other evidence?
Calls for hearsay.
Oral.
No.
Now, you said that the reason A, B, and C weren't collected is because you were only interested in collecting what you termed representative stains, is that right?
Yes.
Well, at Bundy, ma'am, every drop along that walkway was collected, wasn't it?
Yes.
You didn't leave out any drops simply because you deemed them representative, did you? Or, I'm
No.
sorry, because you didn't deem them relevant, did you?
It's vague as to which drops.
Sustained. Rephrase the question.
Bundy, there were 5 drops, 47, 48, 49, 50, and 52, that you observed on June 13th, right?
Correct.
And you collected them all.
Yes.
There were no other drops along that same walkway that you saw but didn't collect. Isn't that correct?
That's correct.
And I believe you said on direct examination that you would collect the first few stains and then the last few stains, and it wouldn't be necessary to collect the middle stains as long as they went in the same direction. Is that correct?
Yes.
Well, do you know what direction those drops were going in when you collected them on June 13th?
There really were not any drops that were way out of line. They were following more or less pathway.
Well, Ms. Mazzola, on June 13th, did you know whether or not these drops indicated that the person was walking from the Bronco to the house or from the house to the Bronco?
I personally did not know.
Well, did Mr. Fung, in your presence, say that these drops have a direction indicating that the person is walking from the Bronco to the house as opposed to from the house to the Bronco?
Calls for hearsay.
Oral.
I do not believe so.
So you did not know on June 13th which direction these drops were going in, did you?
No.
Now, other than items A, B, and C, which were photographed but not collected, was there anything else worth documenting with a photograph on the driveway that was photographed?
I do not believe so.
That was it, just those drops, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 in A, B, and C, is that right?
I'm not sure what else the photographer took pictures of.
Now, Ms. Mazzola, would you agree that the blood drop that you have identified as number 5, I'm sorry, as number 6, as A, and as B, are all to the left side of the driveway as you walk in toward the house? Is that a fair statement?
Yes.
Now, Ms. Mazzola, Detective Van Atta testified that it was his theory that Mr. Simpson had returned home the night of the 12th, and opened the gate and walked directly along the south side of this driveway toward the location where the glove was recovered.
This is an improper
I'm
question.
laying a foundation, Your Honor. It's a hypothetical.
All right. Assume that.
Okay. First of all, would you agree that the distance from the Rockingham gate to the location where the glove was collected is approximately 250 feet?
I have no idea what the distance is.
All right. Let me show you some that has already been admitted. previously admitted as Exhibit 1072, which is a surveyor's drawing of Mr. Simpson's home and property. You see that? Have you had a chance to
Yes.
look at it?
Yes.
Okay. Now, the only blood stain that is on the south side of the driveway would be stain A. Is that correct? Which wasn't collected by you.
That's correct.
And would you agree that the distance from stain A to the location where the glove was collected is a distance of approximately 250 feet?
Well, no foundation.
Sustained. Rephrase the question.
Well, do you know where the glove was collected, ma'am?
I know the area, yes.
Okay. And you had seen it,
I had not seen the glove before it was collected.
but you were shown the place where it had been collected by Mr. Fung?
Yes.
All right. And by looking at this surveyor's drawing of Mr. Simpson's house and property, can you see the approximate location where it was? Approximately.
Approximately, yes.
All right. Now, beginning at the curb and going to that location, approximately how many feet is that?
No foundation that she knows.
Looking at that, can you tell what the distance is?
The approximate distance.
All right, what's the approximate distance?
It's approximately 250 feet from the curb.
All right. And now, instead of the curb, if we come into the location of stain A, which is the one stain that's on the south side of the driveway, approximately how far is stain A from the curb? Approximately.
From the curb?
Yes.
Check. Approximately 20 feet or so.
So would it be fair to say that the distance from stain A to the glove is approximately 230 feet?
Approximately, yes.
And isn't it true that when you were at Rockingham on the 13th, you examined the walkway for evidence, the walkway leading up to the garage?
Yes, Mr. Fung and myself looked at the driveway.
And you were examining the driveway for blood evidence, correct?
Correct.
And then you also examined the walkway on the south side of the house, heading out to where the glove was recovered, did you not?
Yes.
And isn't it a fact that on that walkway, all the way to where the glove was recovered, you never saw any drop of blood on the sidewalk?
Personally, no.
And isn't it true, ma'am, that the wall along the south side of the house is made of stucco?
Of the wall of the house, yes.
And you examined that wall on the 13th of June, did you not?
I personally did not.
You personally made no examination of the wall for trace or blood evidence at all?
No.
But as you sit here today, ma'am, are you aware of the fact that no blood stain was ever found anywhere on that stucco wall?
Sustained.
To your knowledge, has any blood stain been recovered from that stucco wall?
Calls for their
Overruled.
conclusion.
Personally, I have no knowledge.
You want to exhibit that to the jurors at the end, just to make sure that they saw all the pertinent points? You and Mr. Sheckman, exhibit that to 1492 to make sure they saw all the pertinent parts there.
One second. Ms. Mazzola, the last two stains that you swatched and collected that morning were number 7 and 8, right?
Correct.
And as to number 7 and 8, did you keep swatching those two drops until you had collected the entire bloodstain?
I don't recall if I did or not.
Well, was it your standard procedure to do that?
To get up as much as possible, yes.
Oh, okay. And to the best of your recollection, did you get up as much of the stain that was visible as you possibly could? As to items 7 and items 8.
Oral.
I think I got up as much as I could.
Now, back on June 13th, 1994, were you aware that the Los Angeles Police Department had recently begun a DNA testing program?
I knew that they were getting into DNA.
Were you aware that the type of DNA testing that they were going to be doing, or were doing in-house, was called PCR typing?
No.
You said, I think on direct examination, that you took a course in genetics in college?
Yes.
Took a course in molecular biology in college?
Not molecular biology. Microbiology.
Okay. In the course in genetics, did they teach you about DNA?
Yes.
As of June 13th, had you been taught the meaning of DNA amplification?
No.
Had you been taught, either prior to or up to June 13th, that given the exquisite sensitivity of DNA, it's essential that safeguards be taken to avoid the risk of contaminating evidence collected?
Just I want to rephrase it.
Sure. I think you said on direct examination that you are personally familiar with the issues of contamination and cross-contamination. Is that correct?
Yes.
Were you ever taught at the LAPD that it is essential to take proper safeguards to avoid the risk of contaminating evidence for later DNA typing?
The safeguards that we take on all evidence, yes.
Were you ever taught any special safeguards for the particular problems which can arise for DNA testing?
Well, it still assumes specs, not evidence.
Oral.
No, I don't believe so.
Have you ever heard the expression referring to PCR DNA typing as its exquisite sensitivity? Have you ever heard that expression, exquisite sensitivity, used in connection with DNA?
Not since you just mentioned it.
Had you been taught at the LAPD Mini Academy that in the absence of proper safeguards, a minute biological specimen, such as a speck of wet blood or a fleck of dry blood, can be transferred accidentally by criminalists from one area of a crime scene to another?
It still assumes specs, not evidence.
Sustained.
Well, I think subject to connection, Your Honor. He says she's been
Sustained.
taught it. Well, has anyone at SID ever told you that in the absence of proper safeguards, a minute biological specimen, such as a speck of wet blood or a fleck of dry blood, can be transferred accidentally by the criminalist from one area of a crime scene to another.
Still assumes that's not.
Sustained. Counsel, I assume that there'll be other witnesses to this.
I believe you said, Ms. Mazzola, that the only training you've received in collecting bloodstains is for serological testing in general and not for DNA testing in particular. Is that right?
Not in DNA particular, that's correct.
Are there any written guidelines that you have received from the LAPD dealing with any of the particular problems encountered with DNA evidence?
No, I don't believe so.
Have you received any handouts from the LAPD regarding the negative effects that heat and humidity have on the reliability of bloodstain evidence?
No.
Have you been taught by members of the staff at the LAPD Scientific Investigation Division that heat and humidity have negative effects on the reliability of bloodstain evidence?
Assume that's not.
Sustained.
Not just for DNA, but for any type of serological testing.
Assumes that's not.
Sustained. Rephrase the question, counsel. It's an appropriate question if it's phrased appropriately.
Are you aware, okay, to your knowledge, as you sit here today, as to whether heat and humidity can have negative effects on the reliability of bloodstain evidence?
Vague as to reliability.
Overruled.
I know that it can affect them. I'm not sure to what extent.
Well, when you say you know that heat and humidity can affect the bloodstains, have you at least been told that it can affect them adversely?
Assumes that's not evidence.
Sustained.
When you say you are aware that heat and humidity can affect DNA, I'm sorry, withdrawn. When you say you are aware that heat and humidity can have an effect on bloodstain evidence, what effect is it that you believe it will have?
That it might have some effect on the testing, but I'm not sure to what extent or how that would be affected.
No one has told you how heat and humidity will affect bloodstain evidence, only that it has an effect? Is that what you're saying, ma'am?
Well, I don't know personally how much it would degrade, if at all, and over what period of time.
Ah, okay. But as you sit here today, it is your understanding that the effects of heat and humidity are that it can degrade the bloodstain evidence. Is that correct?
That is one possibility.
Okay. Now, in this particular case, you took wet blood swatches and you placed them in a clear plastic bag. Isn't that right?
That's correct.
And then you fold over the top of the plastic bag so they don't fall out. Isn't that correct?
That's correct.
And sometimes these wet swatches that are in the plastic bag actually stick together, don't they?
It happens.
Sometimes they even stick to the side of the plastic bag, don't they?
Yes.
Were you aware that putting wet swatches in a plastic bag causes the swatches to retain moisture?
I was not told that.
But you knew that anyway, didn't you?
Yes.
I mean, you know that just from your everyday experiences, that if you take a wet item and you put it in a plastic bag and you close the top of the plastic bag, it's going to stay real moist in there, isn't it?
It'll stay moist, yes.
Okay, as opposed to if you take the item out of the plastic bag and let it dry in the air, it'll dry much faster, won't it?
Yes.
Okay. And did you know, prior to taking the witness stand today, that by keeping the swatches moist in that plastic bag, that can promote the growth of bacteria on those swatches? Did you know that?
Assumes facts not known, Mrs. Ferguson.
Overruled.
No, not really.
Have you ever had the common everyday experience of putting a wet item such as a bathing suit or something in a wet plastic bag and then taking it out hours later and it smells moldy? Has that ever happened to you?
I would say it smells moldy.
Have you ever had the experience where you've kept any wet item in a sealed plastic bag and taking it out many hours later, whether it's a bathing suit or something else, and it smells somewhat moldy?
Overruled.
There was an,
But if it's a common experience, I don't think we need to go into it too deeply.
We're not going to. Just
All right.
there was an odor, yes.
And as you sit here today, based on your experience in genetics, microbiology, your education in college, your education at the LAPD Mini Academy, are you aware that bacteria eats up pieces of DNA?
Assumes facts not known.
Sustain.
Well, based on your education and your training, do you have any knowledge about what effect bacteria has on DNA?
No.
You've never been taught anything about what effect bacteria has on DNA?
No.
You said that you have some knowledge of the effects of humidity and moisture on a swatch that's kept in a sealed plastic bag. Do you have any awareness of the effect of heat on a wet swatch in a sealed plastic bag?
Not personal knowledge, no.
What kind of knowledge do you have if it's not personal knowledge about this?
Just from what I've been told, I have not seen the effects personally.
You've been told by people at SID, at LAPD?
Yes.
And have you been told by people at LAPD that just like moisture, heat also can promote bacterial growth?
It's possible, yes.
And have you been told by people at LAPD, by the way, did you have these conversations with people at LAPD prior to June 13th, 1994, or since June 13th, 1994?
I can't remember exactly when it was.
Do you remember where it was?
At work.
Was it just a casual conversation, or was it one of the lectures at the Mini Academy?
I'm not really sure.
And did any of these people who you had these discussions with at work talk to you about the combined effects of heat and humidity on a wet blood swatch kept in a sealed plastic bag?
No, I don't believe so.
Well, did those people tell you, I think you said a moment ago, that heat can cause bacteria to develop? Is that right?
Calls for percent.
Overruled.
It's a possibility that it could occur.
And that humidity, or the moisture of the swatch in the sealed plastic bag, can also possibly cause bacteria to develop as well. You were told that by these people at LAPD, is that right?
Yes.
So would it be fair to say that if you have both heat and the moisture, that together they will both possibly create or cause bacteria to develop on those swatches?
Calls for expert opinion.
Sustains. Beyond the scope of expertise here.
have you been taught to follow the Los Angeles Police Department manual?
Assumes facts and evidence.
Overruled.
We have looked at the LAPD manual.
And have you been taught to apply the booking directions contained in the LAPD manual?
I don't believe so.
Ma'am, have you been taught at the LAPD Scientific Investigation Division that with respect to preserving wet stains, you should do the following? Items containing wet blood, semen, or chemical stains shall be permitted to dry at room temperature before packaging. Plastic containers or plastic wrap shall not be used as a packaging material. Were you taught that at LAPD?
For final booking, yes, that's entirely correct.
Well, ma'am, were you given particular pages of the LAPD manual to know for booking evidence?
No.
Were you told by anybody at SID that the LAPD manual is simply a guideline and not rules which you are required to follow?
Irrelevant.
I believe I heard it was to be used as a guideline.
And who told you that it was a guideline, ma'am?
I don't remember offhand.
Was it one of your supervisors at the mini academy?
I don't remember.
One moment, Your Honor. Are you aware of the fact, Ms. Mazzola, that the Los Angeles Police Department manual states that all employees of the department are to conform with the rules and provisions herein contained? Are you aware of that?
No,
Assumes facts and evidence.
Overruled.
no.
Would you agree, ma'am, that that statement from the Los Angeles Police Department manual declares that this manual sets directions for you and are not simply guidelines, correct?
Facts and evidence.
Overruled.
Would you like me to show you the actual section of the manual?
Excuse me, counsel. We've gone through this manual in front of this jury for approximately 45 minutes with another witness. You've already established what was done in this case. You've established what the manual says.
Ms. Mazzola, you stated that your understanding of the section in the LAPD manual on preserving wet stains is only instructions for final packaging, not temporary packaging. Is that right?
That's correct.
Is there any place in the actual rule listed in the LAPD manual that creates that exemption for temporary packaging? Do you see that anywhere in the rule?
I don't know, I haven't read it.
You've never read the LAPD manual section on how to preserve wet stains? Is that what you're saying?
That's correct.
Have any of your instructors at the LAPD ever read to you the section from the Los Angeles Police Department manual on how to preserve wet stains at a crime scene?
Not from the manual, no, I don't believe so.
No one in the whole year and a half that you've been there has ever read that to you?
Not from the manual,
You've never read it yourself?
no.
Now, Section 51012 of Los Angeles Police Department manual states, Ms. Mazzola, quote, analyzed evidence requiring freezer storage shall be booked at Central Property Division no later than 6 hours after it is obtained. During the time that you've been at the Los Angeles Police Department, have you ever personally read that section of the LAPD manual?
No,
Seems facts not matters.
Overruled.
no,
During the year and a half that you've been with the Los Angeles Police Department, has anybody at the LAPD SID Mini Academy ever read to you this particular section of the Los Angeles Police Department manual?
no,
Would you agree, ma'am, that from the sentence I read to you about this manual, that the manual is not to be regarded as merely a guideline?
It's argument.
Sustained.
Would you agree, ma'am, that neither you nor Mr. Fung booked any of the evidence that needed to be frozen within 6 hours after it was obtained?
that's correct.
And, Ms. Mazzola, do you have the...
It's 163H.
So I'll show you what's already been previously introduced as Prosecution Exhibit 163H, which are 3 analyzed evidence envelopes. Now, when you obtain a reference sample of fresh blood, what color envelope is it to be stored in?
I know in toxicology, we receive our blood samples in the gray envelope.
And since you've been, I'm sorry, and that's your only experience with receiving blood vials, would be in toxicology?
Except for the occasion in this case, which I had limited involvement with the blood.
Okay. And in those cases where you receive a fresh vial of blood, it's in the gray envelope, is that right?
That's right.
And on the gray envelope, under the word analyzed evidence, would you please tell the jury what it says?
To be refrigerated.
And that is an instruction to the person who holds that gray envelope that the evidence is to be refrigerated, correct?
Correct.
Have you ever been told by anyone, since you've been working at the Los Angeles Police Department, SID, that it's perfectly okay, instead of refrigerating a blood vial, to leave it on a counter overnight in a trash bag? Has anyone ever told you that?
Overruled.
No, I don't believe so.
Did anyone ever teach you at what rate blood breaks down and degrades?
No.
Did anyone at SID Mini Academy ever teach you that it's okay to let wet blood stains remain in a sealed plastic bag in the rear of a truck in the middle of June for 7 hours?
That was never brought up.
It was never brought up at the Mini Academy?
No.
Well, you say that, I'm sorry. Were you taught that it's okay to use a plastic bag for short-term packaging?
Yes.
And that's something you learned at the Mini Academy?
Yes.
What did your instructors mean by short-term, ma'am? Did they say?
Until the samples could be brought back to the laboratory for air drying.
Well, they told you that final packaging should not be in plastic bags, correct?
Correct.
And did they tell you the reason they shouldn't be in plastic bags?
Because they were to be frozen.
Well, did they tell you that if they're stored in a plastic bag long-term, that the samples could degrade?
I don't believe they mentioned that.
They never explained to you what effects packaging in plastic bags would have on the evidence?
We were just told final packaging was not to be in plastic.
They just told you how to do things, they never told you why. Is that your testimony?
If it was important to tell us why, they would.
You're assuming that if it was important to tell you why, they would?
Sustained.
Did they ever tell you that if you were going to be out in the truck for more than a half hour or an hour, you shouldn't wait and keep them in plastic bags? Instead, you should take them out of plastic bags.
They never mentioned that, no.
Did they ever tell you that if it was 2 or 3 hours, that that's too long?
No.
Did they ever tell you that if it was 15 hours, that's too long?
I don't believe they put a time limit.
Oh, they just said when you get back to the laboratory, and that's it.
As soon as was feasibly possible.
But they didn't tell you after so many hours that the evidence can begin to degrade.
No.
Were you ever taught, ma'am, that if the DNA deteriorates in the blood swatch, were you ever taught that if the DNA deteriorates in the blood swatch and is then cross-contaminated with other DNA, that it makes it more difficult to identify the cross-contaminant?
Sustained.